OCO, welcome to Speaking Our Truth podcast for change by the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. Before we get started, let's hear a quick word from NIWRC.
The National Indigenous Women's Resource Center offers culturally grounded resources and materials to support tribal domestic violence programs and grassroots advocates. Learn more at niwrc.org/resources.
Sweet, never fading flower, I bloomika, auka pauakalani, ike maui kanani o napua.
This episode, we are featuring Nanny Faye Paglinawan, or Aunty as we call her. She is a kapuna, or elder, a founding member of Women Helping Women, and serves on the board of directors for the Pohana o na Wahine, and has been a longtime advocate in the domestic violence movement for over 40 years. Aunty is the recipient of the Women Helping Women Lifetime Achievement Award and was honored on April 3rd at the unveiling of a mural in her honor. It was designed by Oscar Lett, and we have information on the artist and the mural linked in the podcast description. There is also a talk story and animation that explains the background of the mural. So if you want to learn more, we encourage you to go to the Maui Public Art Corp at mauipublicart.org. Aunty participates in the Family Advisory Group for MMIW with NIWRC. Today, my co-host is Tia Bajoni. She is a policy specialist with the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. Hi, Tia.
Hey, Leanne. Thanks for that great introduction for Aunty. We're very proud to have her. Welcome, Aunty.
Oh, mahalo.
Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for asking me. I feel so honored.
Well, we're so happy that you're here with us today. And as we've mentioned in the introduction, you've been involved with advocacy for a very long time. What has changed from when you first began to now?
Well, a lot of it is that now I'm focusing on myself, whereas I believe and work really hard on breaking the silence. So when I'm talking with, when I was first trained in the job, it was to work with them and where they're at. However, we can work together. Being that I'm a child member, I come from trauma. My father beat up my mother all of my life, all the way till she passed. So there is a lot of, I work on changing Nanny Faye first before I think I'm gonna save anybody else. And then that's where it comes down to us working together. And then I'm not there, I'm here or there to save anybody. We help each other emotionally because trauma is lifelong. It doesn't ever go away. You cannot forget a memory. And some memories are very strong and horrific. And sit and listen, get it out, and then move again. And then the trauma comes back. And then I've been doing a lot of different tools around that. What's the different ways that you can address the trauma when it comes up? When you're in a store, driving a car, at the beach, at a party, you never know when it's going to come up, when things trigger it. And that seems to have helped. I still get phone calls from women talking about addressing that.
Just addressing like during your day, just these micro moments throughout your day.
Yeah, throughout the day. And then I've learned to get plenty boundaries too. Otherwise, it's overwhelming. I mean, I've been through burnout 3 times, and that's when I started to learn I got to take care of Nanny Faye first. If you don't take care of Nanny Faye, you cannot take care of anybody. And as long as I'm alive, I want to be here for my maopuna, for my grandchildren. I have a 14-and-a-half-old granddaughter that we have to watch like a hawk. She's right at that age, and she's only 14, but she'll be 50 next year. But some men tried to pick her up already. And our area is trafficking is one of the highest, just in our little mall down here. So I'm always talking to people about, take care, don't park next to a van, all those little safety methods. The last healing circle that I took about maybe 3 years ago, our facilitator said lifelong journey. And I used to say lifelong learning, but the lifelong journey is forever. From the time you're 6 months, 2 years, 5, 10, all the way up. If you happen to live to 100, then the journey changes. And you have to keep taking what you put in the canoe, take it out and add some more. And then you get into a certain age again, then you have to unload your canoe and add something else. And you always got to watch where you're paddling that canoe. What's the ocean like? You cannot go out if it's a storm. And that seems to work good for Indigenous people. Indigenous people like metaphors. Anything around water seems to work. They seem to get it a little bit better.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the metaphors topic, because I know that in our meeting with you in the past, you've mentioned that there was a phrase that helped your healing circles and the women that you've encountered through this advocacy work before, and I think it had something to do with the weather. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, that's the same thing with the canoe. Instead of saying, how are you feeling? I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling scared. This was the same woman, Aunty Burgess. She told us to say, what is your weather like? We had to describe where we are by the weather. And I was the oldest at that time, and the youngest was about in their early 50s. So we all have been through there, done it, and then, going through another beginning stage of womanhood. And it was amazing. We were all in some kind of transition. The descriptions was tornadoes, 100-foot tidal waves, hurricanes, hanging from the sky, or jumping off a cliff with a broken rope, and we could follow without just saying the English words, or feeling sad, confused. Not when we said, we were in, I forget the one that was in turmoil, where you're in a current, and the current is pushing you all over the place. And so you're just fighting, but you don't know where you're going.
I've heard that as like a kind of trapped in your own cyclone or your own
Yes.
something.
So yeah, that was so now when I'm thinking of what kind of mood I am, I try to think weather. It took us a while to even get used to it. When she first said, what's your weather like? We all kind of looked at her, what are you talking about? But it worked. And I'm in touch still with, there was about 11 of us in this circle, all on the Zoom. Most of us was from the island of Maui, but we had each island, at least one from each island.
I think that also kind of like pressures you, but it kind of like forces you to kind of ground yourself in your environment a little bit.
Yes.
Like it's a way to, feel in touch with nature.
It brings you right here where you are. And yes, you're dealing with nature. Even if you say in a cyclone, it has to do with the universe, the clouds, the rain, the trees, the earth, and even what's under the earth. It'll cover fresh water, salt water. It's just so wide.
I also appreciate that because it kind of also gives a sense of, even if you are in the cyclone right now, it'll pass. Like, the weather's ever moving. And so whatever you're feeling right now, it doesn't have to be permanent.
And then it puts you in a position or thinking of, okay, what do I have to do next, right here at this moment now? Don't think next week, but what do I need to do now
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of, is it puts you in the present moment.
in the present moment? And the word that I got too also was the word permission. When I'm talking to women, I always end with, I give you permission to be safe. Because well, you folks know, I don't have to tell you, but a part of the dynamics of domestic violence is that a woman must always, always justify and explain. That's 100%. I don't care what your ethnicity, what your language, what your background, what your belief systems are. You need to justify and explain. And you got to have permission. I'm going to the store, or I'm going to go pick the kids up at school, or I want to meet her, but it's a permission asking, can I go?
Mm-hmm.
I now give it as a tool for, give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. Okay, Tia, I'm feeling junk, but I give you permission to go eat a dark chocolate bar. Or, where you go create a positive crisis. That's another terminology that I use. Create a positive crisis. Would change your hairdo. Would change your earrings. Would change your shoes. Some people are purse people. Would change your purse. Even makeup, either take off makeup or put on makeup, but create a positive crisis, because right now you're just used to being here. So in the midst of all here, I'm going to go comb my hair. Are you serious? That's a crisis, just to comb your hair. But I tell you, it works every time.
That makes so much sense. I love that you said that, because I think all the time when I'm in like a bad spot, that I just need to do something nice for myself and good for myself and make myself feel better. And also with the weather, I was thinking, yeah, when it's raining, we just need some sunshine to come back to.
Yeah.
I love thinking of it that way. It makes everything so much clearer and easier to deal with.
Leanne, do you want to ask the webinar question?
Yeah, I was watching a webinar that included a couple members of Pohana Onawahine, and you were in there, Aunty, as well. And there was a quote, and I'm going to try and say it my best. I think you know which phrase it is. It translates into okay, I'll say Ika olela noke ola Ika.
Speaking of the language, is like, yeah.
Which translate to, in language there's life and in language there's death. And that's something that you shared on that webinar. It got me thinking a lot about how can language lift us or oppress us.
Yes, that's a big one. And that seems to be global anyway, at least throughout the United States and Canada and Alaska, Austria, even in Africa and Haiti, they're having. If your language is gone, and then you have to pick up on what the colonizer does, whether it's American English, French, Spanish in the Philippines, you lose a part of who you are. Your DNA is in change. That's why I ask myself, Nanife, how are you colonizing yourself? Especially as being a woman. How do I make myself less? Sometimes you're doing it and you don't even know that that's what you're doing. It's just so a part of your life. At the school I went to, they said it was a mortal sin to speak Hawaiian, that you're going to go to hell. I went to a very Catholic school. They did a lot of damage. I don't know if you guys are Catholic, sorry, but I don't do Catholicism anymore. But my parents both spoke little words here and there. And I had the aunts that could speak Hawaiian, but they always snuck it. They would sneak and go in a corner by themselves and speak it. And then as soon as we would come, they would change it. That when I was 20 years old, I went to go visit my grandmother who lived on the countryside. And she never locked her doors. we could just walk in. So I walked in the kitchen, and she was sitting on a table with this Uncle George. And they were like about in their middle 70s, and I was about 22 or so. Anyway, I was still kind of naive and trying to find Nani Faye. Where is Nani Faye? And they were talking fluent Hawaiian, fluent. And I stood there and I was in shock. And I said, Grandma, you speak in Hawaiian. And two of them turned to me and they both started to shake. And this Uncle George started to cry. And he was the kind of man that, he knew that I gotta be tough. I cannot be a soft Hawaiian man. And I couldn't believe he was crying. So I thought, oh my gosh, I'm interrupting. I thought they were having an affair. So I said, I'm sorry. I'm leaving. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They said, no, come here. Uncle George said, girlie. They called me girlie. Come here, sit down, sit down. So I reluctantly sat down. She says, I can tell you this story. When I was like about 6 years old, and at that time it was against the law to speak, but you cannot just stop all of a sudden. It was in the beginning when they had the military come in and they took over the government, and we had to stop speaking. And so anyway, they're in the house, and the mother is telling them, whatever she's telling them, speaking fluent Hawaiian. But the military walked in, or maybe about 5 of them came, burst open the door, grabbed their mother by her hair, punched her face, and dragged her outside. And these kids are small. Mommy, 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 mom. They're crying, so they followed them out. And he said that when he followed them out, and he's still crying, this 76-year-old man, that his father was tied up on a pole with his hands behind his waist, all full of blood. They had beat him. And then when he looked up on a tree, they had hung the grandfather. And so talk about trauma. And that's all for speaking the language. And then from then, I had to process all of this. But then I could call it that when I was doing my genealogy, all of the aunts and the grand aunts that were still alive, they said, stop it, Nani Faye. Things are better left unsaid. I call that the silence generation. And I found that, this story was not unique. They all witnessed it, and now I understood why they didn't speak it to us. They didn't want us to die or them to die. That was real for them. I never forgot that story, ever. And when I started to go and ask people my age, my story, this, they said, you know what? So many said they have the same story. I understand why so many didn't speak it. It witnessed too much horror. Talk about trauma. And, they had, and then that's when I started to understand generational trauma a little bit more. I just didn't have the words at the time. I have the words for it now. That's to understand why so many, not only because they were forced to stop, because there were some that went, but they went underground. There's plenty of Hawaiians that could speak it, but they hid it. And they kept it within their own family.
I know that recently there's been a mural created in your honor. And to describe it for listeners, it's a depiction of your daughter talking to you, and you're leaning in and listening.
Right.
And so that correlates to what you're saying of like breaking the silence, and that breaking that intergenerational trauma by speaking out and speaking out loud, not only in a literal sense with like the native Hawaiian language, but talking about the trauma itself. What has that process been like for you, getting to the mural itself and like,
Well, that's when I was breaking the silence. This here is talking now. And, it's I know some of my families, they have a hard time with me, but I talk about my father and what I witnessed. I being the oldest daughter of 14 children. I saw things that the bottom half of my family didn't see, because that goes with the territory. And then if you're the oldest daughter, well, in any ethnicity, you're usually the second mother. I was watching kids since I was 6. And that goes for, like I said, for anybody. So I was the second mother. I had some resentment with that because I couldn't go out and play with other kids. I had to stay home, wash clothes while my mother was working, and I had to make sure the rice was cooked, all that kind of stuff, and watch babies. And then at that time, we didn't have, that washing machine dryer kind of stuff. We had to put it in a wringer and do it by hand. And then at that time, they didn't have Pampers and all of that. It was all cloth diapers. So that's another process. When I tell my baby sister that and my grandchildren, they go, what?
Oh, yeah, washing the cloth diapers.
Yeah.
So, kind of thinking about that as somebody who's just going about in the world, and there's moments multiple times throughout my day where I silence myself or I notice myself thinking that even if I spoke up, it wouldn't matter.
Right, right.
I want to ask you, where does our voice come from? Like, how can we let it inspire us to be brave and share?
Well, you find people you can be comfortable with. When I first started to work with Women Helping Women, but it was called Alternatives to Violence at the time, I was the first woman of color and the first Hawaiian that was ever hired. And then we started to go to all these different workshops on the continent. When the first time I heard women of color, what is that? And then we got a few women of color, but they weren't treated right. And then after going through, I don't know how many conventions I went to, that I figured out they hired me because I was fair. And I had light eyes. See, my eyes are sort of hazel. Even though I'm not dark, but you could tell I had something else. And when I was younger, my hair was really dark and kinky. So I had something other than white, but nobody, when you get into that color coding and trying to figure out what, where, when. So we were going through all of that. Anyway, we had created a Woman of Color caucus, which caused so much controversial. We ended up closing the agency down for a short time, and we took them to court, and we each got $3,000. There was 11 of us. And so with this group, we would meet every once in a while, and then we would call each other the dumping group. When you get things are not going right and you feel it, so you just go, you know what, at work, at home. And that really helped when you can be open with certain groups of or certain individuals. And that helped all of us break the silence. All of us. And until today, there's 5 of us that's left. And we still call and talk every so often. The rest have passed. But every single one of us, the silence is broken. Even though, we went to work in different places, but usually with nonprofit or, working with women's issues and stuff like that. Yeah, we called each other the dumping girls because we just dump on each other, or we would say, I need to vomit. Just to break the monotony of saying, I need to talk, I'm by myself. No, I need to dump. That kind of stuff. So that helped for all of us to own where we came from, because every single one of us came from some kind of dysfunction. And we had different ethnicities too. Most of us was some kind of mix. We were all women of color. Some was Filipino, some was Japanese, Portuguese, Hawaiian, and mixes. We all have our own mixes.
Earlier, you had mentioned how am I colonizing myself? I think was the phrase you said. Like, that's the question you ask yourself a lot. And I find myself when I'm thinking really terrible things about myself and like adding to the pressure,
Yeah.
but by myself, but like
Right.
adding to the pressure of like the world and, my community and my own trauma and all of that. Hearing you talk about that group is really wonderful because I feel like a lot of my strength comes from my circle too. And it's that active sort of like talking and listening. It isn't just venting. It's like, this is truly what's wrong with
Oh.
with what I'm going through right now. And it's kind of like almost like taking ownership of this is what's really wrong with me now. And I need someone to know about it. So
Yeah,
that's
because we all human beings have to talk it out, or it gets stuck in our body, then we get sick.
yeah.
And that's a common thing with women from abuse. They always get some kind of sick. At the shelter, they had all different rashes all over the place. Heart, stomach, liver, diarrhea, constipation, bleed too much, don't bleed enough, all that kind of stuff. The body has so many ways of being negative. And then talking out loud to yourself. I took about 3 or 4 different workshops around that because I could never do it. I was raised, if you talk to yourself, you crazy. So I had to get over that one. That was hard. I couldn't go in a mirror, look at myself and talk. Nanife, how you feeling? I couldn't do it. It took me a long time. Now I do it all the time. Even when I'm walking here, one of my grandsons last year in junior high school, he walks out of the room, with the pandemic. And he comes out and he says, cool out, focus. Get your act together, focus, because they had to do homework at home. I started to laugh because he saw me doing that. Because I'll say, Nanife, concentrate, Nanife, concentrate. What do you need to do right now? And at first they'd look at me like I was crazy. But now I'm starting to catch my granddaughter. And I got that from an African-American woman from Chicago, a Norwegian woman, and a Korean woman, 3 different cultures. They said, go and talk to yourself. So and now, like I said, I still do it until I do, especially if I catch my brain colonizing myself. When you think too much and and then you start talking to yourself, but only in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I said, get it out, Nanife, talk it out. And I'll go in the mirror and I talk to myself. And I feel better. Instead of trying to figure it out in my brain, I get all confused. And that has worked with women when I was starting to do groups with women. And I said, just do it. Even if you're at the shelter, talk to yourself. Everybody's going to understand.
I love that. And I think that's so important because I also sometimes feel a stigma behind talking to my friends about my feelings or even myself sometimes too, because I feel this stereotype of being like a gossiper or being someone who's too filled with emotions or like needs to have my girlfriends who I can vent to, and it makes me feel inadequate in a way of
Right.
like these are problems that I have when really like no, these are just things that all humans feel at times, and having a safe space to share is super important. But
Yes.
I feel like sometimes as like women we get that stereotype put on us that like when we chat we're just gossiping
Yes.
thing, and it makes us silent. It does.
No, it does the silence and the guilt.
Mhm.
The women that are, because we're taught to do as you're told, and then always take care of somebody else before you. That was another thing I had to really work on. You got to take care of Nanife first. And I think, the guilt was like, oh, no, don't take care of Nanife first. You got to take care of somebody else. Even if you're crawling on the floor, I'm exaggerating this picture, but if you're crawling on the floor, you still got to go take care of somebody first. But the training is if something happens to you, you can't do anything. for anybody. So I take care of Nanife first, and then I can take care of a multitude.
What are some ways that you like to heal yourself? Like, what are some daily small things?
Well, when I was a bit younger, I was an earring person. I loved earrings. I was noted for earrings. But now, as I age, I have skin issues that I can't wear earrings anymore. But I change earrings. Or like if I want to get a positive crisis, I put one earring here and a different one here. That would drive me crazy. If it doesn't match, they have to match, especially if I got a small one and one dangling. And then I ended up to crack up laughing. So that was a positive crisis. And then I got away from that brainwashing that I was doing to myself and the guilt. And again, I've been using permission for almost 30 years now. Nanife, I give you permission. Go change your earrings. And for some people, like I said, some people are purse people. Then you figure out that dynamic. When your brain is going 100 miles per hour, then just go do something positive. Even if you just go to wash your hands in water, or even if you go outside and touch a leaf or a small bark of a plant, that's healing right there. It doesn't matter what culture, again, what your religion and what language you speak. Nature is healing. Whether you're in a forest or you're just standing on a porch and touching a leaf. I do that every single day. I touch a leaf because I can't walk far anymore. And then I don't push, especially if there's nobody home in case I fall. Nobody gonna hear me call. But I'll walk outside because my daughter and my son-in-law, they have plenty plants around the house. So I just go touch it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I live like 2 blocks away from the river here.
Oh,
I just go walking by the river every day, pretty much. And I have quite a bit of plants here too. But I'm always like, I'm always in the search for new, I guess like a westernized way that I picture it is like ways to cope.
oh, right.
And I recognize that like I still have I have a lot of trouble some days, and so I'm always on the lookout.
That's normal. That's why they call it generational trauma. I accept when a trauma comes to me because I know it's going to come back. I know. I said, "Oh, you're visiting again. Sorry, I'm going to have to close the door for now." And I give you to all the plants because I cross the street from where our house is, and the house is elevated, yeah. And my room is on top and it looks across at this little forest area. And I don't put curtains because nobody can see inside unless they come with a helicopter. But I look in and I threw it all out there. Please take it and give me more. Thank you for giving me oxygen. I do stuff like that. I end up having a conversation with the plants. And that's me getting it out. It's still not stuck in where I'm thinking, okay, just stop it, Nanife. No, I'm not stopping it right now. I'm owning it. I'm colonizing myself right now. Okay, blow it out. And then sometimes I just go to the kitchen and wash my hands. Or the bathroom, whatever is closest.
There's lots of similarities, like what you were saying with, the woman from Chicago and the Korean woman and all of that, because sometimes I do that too, but I don't wash my hands, but I do like the literal.
Oh, right. Not the sciatic.
Just get it off me right now, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Like little rituals for yourself. I like that. Are there any areas of advocacy or I know in the past you've mentioned them as like social ills that you wish more people paid attention to, either in your community?
Now, the younger generations, like you folks, talk about it more. And I see that there's more and more or even for the younger generations, that they're more aware and they're not afraid of using the word trauma. And it doesn't have to be anything bad. In my training in the beginning, even in the psychology classes, trauma was used negativity instead of owning it. It's like having a broken arm. You can't just put your arm on a shelf and let it go. You have to tend to it. You got to wrap it up. Maybe you have to put medication, get the wrap, and take care of it. And when you know you're in trauma, then you own it and then take care of it. And then you deal with it at the time. And I'm constantly saying, Nanife, you're not 5 years old. You're not 4, or you're not 14, you're not 21. Now I can say I'm not 75. Because I still get the trauma. And here I am pushing 80. However, I can deal with it. And when the however is another word that I learned from this workshop that I took. Okay, I'm not 5 years old. However, I'm here. I'm 46, 56, 66, 76. And I'm here in the moment. Okay, go do something for yourself. Go wash a cup, go clean. Even if you just clean a corner, or take one container from the left side of the desk and put it on the right. At least you're moving something. And then before you know it, the trauma, the thought leaves. And certain things still trigger. Like I said, I saw stuff that I should never have seen as a child. My father was awful. I caught him in the house 3 times with 3 different women while my mother's in the kitchen washing dishes. So even though I was young, I knew that something was wrong. And I'm carrying a baby, and he's in a hallway making out with this woman. It's in my brain. How do you get that out? So now I can talk about it without even getting mad or crying. And this is where this group has really helped all of us. It has helped all of us because we all say the same thing. I need to dump. I need to cry. And then we just, on Maui, we had the group, so we could do it in person, which is so much better. But now we got to do it on the phone, or every once in a while we do it on a Zoom.
Are these people you've known for a long time?
Oh, yeah, that's all from Women Helping Women stuff. That's when we all met. No, but actually some of them, when I first worked at the shelter, they came to the shelter with their baby. I was there, and I helped take care of them. And in fact, she ended up, this particular woman ended up being the director years later of Women Helping Women, yeah.
You're also involved with the Pohana, yeah?
Yes.
So getting to be a part of all of these different groups, and with us here at NIWRC and our family advisory work group, you get to see a lot of all of the different specific issues in each, Native, Indigenous,
Yes.
tribal perspective. But like the overarching social ills are like there though, and that's the
Telling
frustrating.
the same story, yeah. I went to this convention in Aotearoa, which is New Zealand. In fact, it was this particular woman who became the director of Women Helping Women. She went after money to get us training. We had so much wonderful training. And one of it was the Healing Indigenous People Worldwide. And she sent me, and then I brought my daughter to come with me too, because she said, I'm not going to let you go by yourself, Ma. You're going to end up in Australia instead of Aotearoa. So, but she came and she learned so much, because she always thought I was always exaggerating, because she always said, when is it going to end, Ma? When is it going to end? I said, it's going to end when I maki die dead. It's going to continue in your generation and your children's generation. We have to keep talking and fighting right now. That's the way the world is. I didn't ask for this, but that's our reality. And my daughter learned so much from that, because she sat in on my, I gave a presentation, and that's when she really heard the whole story. she kind of backed off a little bit. She's thinking that it's too much for me, but I can handle. Give me a crisis, just don't give me in a front desk and an administrative job. No, I cannot write policies and do all of that. However, I can handle crisis. I'm taking it as positive. Before I thought I was a Miss Weirdo. You know how you always put yourself down first? At that point, yeah, I don't do that anymore. I had to work on that.
I was thinking, how do we kind of start the conversation sometimes if we don't have that dump group or relatives that we can turn to start sharing more of ourselves? How do we kind of get that conversation started?
Well, some people go to women's groups, they have different groups. And if you belong to any particular religion, any Christian, there's all kinds of Christians. And then here we have plenty Buddhists. You find what works with you. I think that we thought that we were just fortunate because we all wanted to work in a domestic violence field. Because every single one of us came from some kind of abuse. Some a little more than others, but abuse is abuse is abuse. That's what I say. So, and then because we were struggling within the movement itself, and I didn't realize how vocal I was. This is how much I didn't know Nani Faye. We started to speak out. And then how do you work with people of color as opposed to just white women? And then we just learned the white way of addressing domestic violence. And it doesn't always work with Indigenous people. And so that was when we started going to all these different workshops around people of color. Then we're all telling the same story. And we're still telling the same story. This is 2024. And we're still fighting for our language. We're still fighting for our land. It's so ongoing.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I can only give you my experience. And yes, my experience is the same. However, a lot are still keeping silence. So I don't know, I still talk about it when the opportunity comes. And keep looking for that group of people, especially if you're working in that field of fighting a systemic system that's abusive and very racist and very biased. So, we need each other. We do. And then we can say that we can need each other in a healthy way instead of a negative way. And dumping to me is very important. That's positive. That's not negative. And then if you have enough people that come from that same mindset, I just had a friend call me, but about 2 weeks ago, Nanife, I got a dump. Then, okay, spot you later. Have a nice day. Bang. Don't have to explain. I don't need to save her. She just saved herself because she felt safe with me, as I feel safe with her.
I learned so much from you today. There was a couple of times where I was like tearing up a little bit, and it resonated with me a lot. So I appreciate you so much.
No, I appreciate this. I don't, at first I would say, what are they going to get from me?
Everything. I've been asking myself, how's my weather? What do I put in my canoe? And now I'm going to be thinking about who's in my dump group.
There you go.
I'm giving myself permission.
I give you permission. How's that?
Yes.
I give you permission.
Thank you so much.
Okay, aloha, hui ho.
Oh my gosh, that was so nice. I'm still just thinking about how lovely that conversation was.
Yeah, we actually recorded that a little while ago. We're releasing this in August, right?
Mhm.
We recorded in May. And ever since then, I've been finding myself, asking certain questions to disrupt sort of really
How
judgmental thoughts or, spiraling or whatever. And I have Auntie to thank for that because I've been practicing that intentionally since we spoke with her, and it's just been so impactful for me.
Mhm. As I've been reaching out to more people in my that I consider to be in my dump group, I've noticed that it actually brings us closer together and it makes us talk more often and just rely on each other more. And there's never any pressure to, fix any situation. But I really thought that having a dump group or, just people you vent to all the time would be like an inconvenience, I would feel like a burden putting my problems on someone else, but that's actually not what it is. And it's actually had the exact opposite effect. Rather than pushing people away, it's brought my friends even closer to me. I just feel like those relationships are more enriched now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like it also sort of encourages you to reflect a little more on where the sources of the judgments are coming from, or, the feelings of guilt or whatever, where those are coming from. And I feel like having your circle definitely helps you, one, understand where those are coming from. And two, it's very validating to hear from other people like, no, it's okay to have those feelings, but also consider where those thoughts are coming from. You often hear that being vulnerable is really difficult, and it is. But once you pass that threshold with a certain group of people, it's so heartwarming and validating and strengthening.
Yeah, like we are all experiencing a similar feeling. And it reminds me that it's not just me sometimes that's struggling, and that also I don't need to isolate myself if I'm struggling. Healing doesn't have to happen by yourself. And it often is empowered by your community, empowered by ceremony, and you find yourself able to just tackle whatever problem you have with way more confidence and reassurance.
Yeah. And people feel guilty sometimes for putting themselves first, especially in the advocacy space. But reaching out to your friends, like even acts like that are putting yourself first. So it's all kind of like connected together, and like the underlying sort of takeaway from it is it's okay to love yourself and put yourself first.
Absolutely. Giving ourselves permission, again, to take care of ourselves and prioritize ourselves. And I think that is really important when you do advocacy work because it is hard sometimes and it's hard to step away. And you can give yourself permission to take a breath, to be happy in the midst of doing hard work, where you are reminded that tragedy happens, trauma exists. When you do advocacy work, you're reminded of that daily. So hearing from her to give myself permission to be happy outside of that and even within that space
Mhm.
is very liberating.
I think it also points to the fact that just because you have been resilient and you are resilient doesn't mean that you're required to be resilient in order to earn some sort of self love.
The love that you receive and is not based on your performance in life. I think that's a way we colonize ourselves sometimes because there is so much emphasis on us as a society to achieve recognition or admiration from the things that we do, the things that we achieve, how hard we work. And it's actually really detrimental to your health to think in that way. She's giving us permission to say, that's not a traditional way of thinking. That's a way of thinking that was introduced by colonization. So whenever you're putting those thoughts in your head of like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not achieving as much, or I'm not being the best person I can be every day, you're putting a colonial like pressure on yourself. It's not a pressure that exists naturally, you know? So you can kind of acknowledge that and say, okay, high pressure, I see you there. Can you please step aside?
When she mentioned that trauma is sort of throughout your journey in life, that resonated with me a lot because when I was younger, I sort of resisted that. Like, oh, I can fix this and I can be free of it. And hearing her talk about it visiting again, like, oh, here's the trauma again. It's familiar. I know this pattern. I know how to respond to it. Let's heal in the moment some way to move forward in a very positive way. Listening to her, it was really reassuring to know, and kind of sad, although, to hear that, it's a lifelong thing. But because it's lifelong, you don't have to be so hard on yourself when it does come along. I know how to approach it and I know how to respond to it in a way that'll leave me feeling a little healthier and stronger.
Right. I was thinking about it in terms of like thinking about it as a storm, like thinking about it as your weather coming, you know, maybe the first time you've experienced a storm, it's really scary and you don't know what to do and you don't know how to protect yourself. But then the next time it comes, you're a little bit more prepared. You know it's going to go away. And maybe you have some tools to help you out. You have better protection. You can know what to expect. You can reach out to other people for help. And again, you know that it's going to pass.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, even if the tool in the moment is acknowledging, okay, this is happening and not doing anything with it, that's totally okay too. Accepting that this is something that most survivors have to work with
Mhm.
instead of fight constantly, because I feel like that puts a lot of pressure on the responsibility for you to feel better or heal at some point, or there's some end goal. I just really appreciated that she was so reassuring and that it's okay to sort of not be okay sometimes.
Absolutely. It kind of reminded me of, yeah, if you are dealing with a lot, if you're going through trauma, there's only so much you can handle. There's only so much you can take. There's only so much you can focus on. I mean, we're like that just in our normal states, but especially in a state where you've experienced trauma. I think about what she said of what do you put in your canoe? This is your lifeline. This is how you operate in the world. These are the things that are most important to you, the things that help you survive. There's only so much space for these things. So you need to pick the ones that are most important to you and that are going to help you out right here, right now. And anything else that doesn't, just dump it. You know, that's the other thing is that when using that metaphor of what do you put in your canoe, it reminds me that like I can dump something in order to make room for something else, and then I can switch it back if I want. But it's just acknowledging in myself that like if there's something else I'm taking on and it's kind of overflowing, you know, my canoe, like I need to take something else out
Right.
in order to make space for this um feeling or event or circumstance or person, you know, whatever is going on in your life, you are allowed to let something else go in order to make space for something else.
Hmm.
And I find that to be very liberating as well, because again, it makes me think of, you know, we have to be perfect all the time. We need to like perform at our best. And the truth is, we don't. And the only way we can keep ourselves going is if we prioritize the things that are most important to us and leave out the rest.
I think that also works with finding what works for you in the moment and allowing yourself to understand, all right, this tool, this tactic, this person, this pattern no longer helps me in a healthy way or no longer is getting me through this storm. And it's okay to reassess what works and what doesn't. Like, again, things are okay to change. It's fine to change.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it acknowledges your progress.
yeah. Oh, I like that.
Aw.
Another thing I found myself really appreciating was hearing how throughout the years she's found these sort of patterns in the social ills, she calls them, in different communities around the world. And the way we respond to those social ills or, address them or even acknowledge them are kind of similar in all of these communities. But these traumas do exist within mostly Indigenous communities. But there's also resiliency there. And the resiliency is found through those traditional pathways, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, and showing up for each other and acknowledging that even though we have different life experiences, we're still feeling similar things and we can still show up for each other in appropriate ways.
The one thing that is a sure thing is just remembering how I felt. Like trying to remember how I felt right after that interview. I felt so uplifted. I felt so supported. I felt so validated and heard. And that I know that wasn't the point of the podcast or the interview, but I'm just really grateful we got to interview her, and knowing that there are advocates out there who have such knowledge and experience to share willingly and happily is something I'll always be grateful for. And I'm sure we'll interview more people like Aunty, but that was genuinely one of my favorite interviews that we've done.
Yeah, I will remember that. That's probably one of the more, or I think it was just such a special moment. And I'm really glad that it was recorded because now we can share it with other people. And I really hope that anyone listening gets the same thing or similar things out of it that we got and just feel good about yourself, feel motivated and more confident. And I just can't express enough appreciation for Auntie Nani Faye. Yeah, want her to know that we appreciate her so, so much. So much love to Auntie Nanny Faye. You've done incredible things in your life, and I know that whatever you continue to do in life will be a positive impact on somebody else.
I'm not sure if we mentioned this or if she mentioned it either, but she celebrated her 80th birthday in June. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so I think that's a wonderful, and she's still, in this advocacy space. She's still uplifting people, and I just, yeah.
Happy 80th, Auntie. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I'm gonna end with a big ahiahe to Auntie. I'm just very glad we got to do this.
Yeah, a big widow over here too.
And thank you to you. Ahiahe to you, Leanne.
Thank you, Tia. I appreciate you. To everyone out there listening, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
A gentle breeze waft my name. Oh, oh, alia, alia, Mayana, iau. Eku sweet, never fading flower. Liliʻuokalani.